I didn't call the police the first time I heard someone walking inside my house. That's the part that still bothers me. Not because I was brave. Not because I thought I could handle it. But because at first it sounded so normal. Just footsteps. Slow. Measured. The kind of sound you hear every day when someone else is home. The problem was that nobody else was supposed to be there. I live alone. At the time, I was 34 years old and renting a small house outside a rural town. The place sat at the end of a dead-end road surrounded by thick woods and overgrown fields. The nearest neighbor lived several hundred yards away. During the day, the isolation was peaceful. At night, it felt different, especially after midnight. That particular night started like any other. I had gotten home around 7, microwaved leftovers, watched a baseball game, and spent the rest of the evening scrolling through my phone. Nothing unusual happened. Nothing that would have prepared me for what was coming. Around 11:30, I locked the front door, checked the windows, turned off the downstairs lights, and went to my bedroom. I had always been careful. Living alone teaches you habits. You check locks. You listen for strange sounds. You pay attention. By 12:30, I was in bed. The house was quiet. The kind of deep silence that only exists in isolated places. No traffic. No neighbors. Just distant wind moving through trees. Eventually I drifted off. I don't know what time I woke up. The digital clock beside my bed wasn't facing me. I remember opening my eyes and feeling disoriented. Something had pulled me out of sleep. At first I thought it had been a dream. Then I heard it again. A creak. Somewhere downstairs. I lay perfectly still. Listening. The sound didn't repeat. After about 30 seconds I convinced myself it was nothing. Old houses make noises. Wood expands. Wood settles. Pipes shift. Every homeowner knows that. I closed my eyes. Then I heard a footstep. Not a creak. Not settling wood. A footstep. Heavy enough to transfer weight through the floor. The sound came from directly beneath my bedroom. I froze. My eyes opened immediately. My heart began beating faster. For several seconds I didn't move. I just listened. Silence. Complete silence. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe I was still half asleep. Maybe my brain was interpreting random sounds incorrectly. Then another step came. Slow. Deliberate. Followed by another. And another. Moving across my living room. Every excuse disappeared. Someone was downstairs. The realization hit me so hard that my stomach felt hollow. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. 2:17 a.m. For a moment I considered calling 911 immediately. But another thought entered my mind. Maybe someone had somehow gotten into the house earlier. Maybe they were drunk. Maybe they thought they were in the wrong home. Maybe. A loud bump interrupted the thought. It sounded like something had been knocked into. The noise came from the kitchen. Then silence again. The kind of silence that feels intentional. As if whoever was downstairs had stopped moving because they were listening too. Listening for me. I sat upright in bed. Every muscle in my body felt tense. I looked toward my bedroom door. The hallway beyond it was completely dark. The staircase was only 15 feet away. Whoever was downstairs could reach my room in seconds. My mouth had gone dry. I unlocked my phone and opened the camera app. Then I switched to the security camera feed. I only had 2 cameras. One covering the front porch. One covering the back door. The front porch was empty. The back door was empty. Nothing moved on either screen. That should have made me feel better. Instead it made me feel worse. Because it meant whoever was inside hadn't just walked in. They were already there. The next sound came from the stairs. One step. Then another. Slowly climbing. I felt every hair on my arm stand up. The staircase had 13 steps. I knew that because I'd counted them countless times. I heard the 3rd step. Then the 4th. Then the 5th. The person wasn't trying to hide. They wanted me to hear them. That realization terrified me more than anything. A burglar usually avoids attention. This person was doing the opposite. The footsteps continued. 6, 7, 8. Each step separated by several seconds. The pacing felt deliberate. Calculated. Like someone enjoying the fear they were creating. I slid quietly out of bed and moved toward the corner of my room. There was no weapon nearby. No gun. No baseball bat. Nothing useful. The only thing I could think to do was stay silent. Maybe they didn't know exactly where I was. Maybe. The footsteps stopped. I counted 10 seconds. 20. 30. Nothing. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. A faint scraping sound. Directly outside my bedroom door. Not walking. Not moving. Just scraping. Like fingertips dragging slowly across painted wood. The sound continued for several seconds. then stopped. I stared at the door, waiting. The handle didn't move. Nobody entered. But I knew they were there, standing inches away. On the other side, I dialed 911. My thumb hovered over the call button. Then my phone vibrated. An incoming text message. The notification appeared across the screen. I almost dropped the phone when I read it. It wasn't from a friend. It wasn't from family. It was from an unknown number. The message contained only 6 words. I know you're awake upstairs. For several seconds I couldn't breathe. My entire body went numb. There was no possibility of misunderstanding. No coincidence. No rational explanation. Someone inside the house was watching me. And somehow they had my number. Another text arrived. Immediately after the first. This one was even shorter. Don't call anyone. The bedroom suddenly felt much smaller. The darkness felt heavier. I looked toward the door again. Nothing moved. No sound. No footsteps. Just silence. The kind of silence that exists right before something terrible happens. Then a third message appeared. This time there was a photo attached. My stomach dropped. The image had been taken through my living room window. It showed my house. The timestamp on the picture was less than 2 minutes old, which meant there wasn't just someone inside. There had been someone outside too. Maybe there still was. And as I stared at that photo, trying to process what I was seeing, a fourth message arrived. I've been here longer than you think. At that moment I realized the nightmare wasn't beginning. It had already started long before I woke up. And somewhere inside the darkness of my house, someone was waiting for me to figure that out. I should have called 911 right then. Looking back, that's the obvious answer. But fear doesn't make you think clearly. Fear narrows your world. It reduces everything down to the next few seconds. The next sound. The next movement. The next mistake. I was staring at my phone, reading that last message over and over again. I've been here longer than you think. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped the phone. Part of me wanted to believe it was some kind of sick prank. Maybe someone from work. Maybe some idiot who knew where I lived. Maybe someone trying to scare me. But deep down, I already knew that wasn't true. Pranks have a purpose. This felt different. This felt personal. I looked back toward my bedroom door. Nothing moved. No shadow under the frame. No sound from the hallway. Just darkness. The kind of darkness that makes your imagination work against you. Slowly, I opened the text conversation. There was no profile picture. No previous messages. Just those 4 texts. The number wasn't saved. I copied it and searched online. Nothing. No results. No information. My thumb hovered over the call button. Then another text arrived. I nearly jumped. Good. That was it. 1 word. Good. The message appeared less than 5 seconds after I had opened the conversation. Whoever was sending them was watching in real time. Watching what I was doing. Watching whether I was calling someone. Watching whether I was responding. My chest tightened. I suddenly became aware of every window in my room. There were 2. One facing the backyard. One facing the woods. Both were covered by blinds. But the realization hit me instantly. Those blinds didn't stop anyone from looking inside if there was even the slightest gap. I turned off my phone screen. The room became darker. For several seconds I sat completely still, listening. Then I heard it. A floorboard. Not outside my door. Further away. Down the hallway. A single creak. The person had moved. I couldn't explain why, but that scared me even more. When they were standing outside my room, at least I knew where they were. Now I didn't. The silence that followed seemed endless. I checked the time. 2:24 a.m. Only 7 minutes had passed since the first text. 7 minutes. Felt like an hour. Then something occurred to me. The attic. My house had a small attic access panel in the hallway ceiling. I had lived there nearly 2 years. I had never gone up there. The landlord told me there was nothing inside except insulation and old wiring. Until that moment, I had never questioned it. Now I couldn't stop thinking about it. I've been here longer than you think. The words repeated in my head. What if they didn't mean tonight? What if they meant days? Weeks? I immediately hated the thought. But once it appeared, I couldn't get rid of it. Every strange thing from the previous months suddenly resurfaced. Food disappearing. Small things being moved. Cabinet doors I didn't remember opening. Missing batteries. A bottle of water I was certain I hadn't left on the kitchen counter. At the time I blamed myself. I lived alone. Nobody else could have done it, right? The memory made my stomach twist. Another text arrived. This one contained only a photograph. I opened it. For a second I couldn't understand what I was seeing. Then my blood ran cold. It was my hallway. The hallway outside my bedroom. The picture had been taken moments earlier. The angle was wrong for any security camera. Wrong for any window. The photo had been taken by someone standing inside my house. I zoomed in. The image was slightly blurry, dark, grainy. But there was enough detail to recognize the hallway table, the framed picture hanging on the wall, the exact spot outside my room. I felt physically sick. The metadata showed the image had been created less than a minute ago. Whoever sent it had taken the photograph and immediately texted it, meaning they were still somewhere inside. Close. Far too close. Then I noticed something else. Something I had missed. The photograph wasn't centered on the hallway. It was aimed slightly upward, toward the attic access panel. My eyes locked onto the image. The panel was open, just a few inches. I knew with absolute certainty that it had been closed before I went to bed. I stared at the picture, unable to move, unable to look away, because suddenly all those strange little incidents from the past year seemed connected. And for the first time, a horrifying possibility entered my mind. What if the person inside my house wasn't an intruder who had broken in tonight? What if they already knew every room, every habit, every lock, every routine, because they had been living above me the entire time? As that thought settled into my mind, I heard a new sound, a soft thump, directly above the ceiling, from the attic, and then another, much closer than the first. The second thump from the attic didn't feel like a sound anymore. It felt like pressure, like something shifting directly above my head, adjusting its weight, deciding whether it wanted to stay still or move. I remember holding my breath without realizing it. Not because I thought it would help me hear better, but because my body simply refused to do anything else. The house was no longer just a house at that point. It felt layered, like I was standing inside something that had been occupied long before I ever moved in. Another sound followed, softer this time, like something sliding across wooden beams. Slow, controlled. Not random movement. Not panic. Deliberate repositioning. I stared at my bedroom door, waiting for it to change. Waiting for footsteps in the hallway. Waiting for the handle to turn. But nothing happened down there. The silence downstairs had become just as unsettling as the sounds above. It meant I wasn't being approached from one direction anymore. It meant I was inside a space that could be moved through without warning. My phone was still in my hand. Screen off. But I could feel it like a hot object, like it was still glowing with the messages I had already read. I didn't turn it on immediately. I didn't want another photo, another sentence, another confirmation that I was being observed in real time. Instead, I slowly lowered myself to the floor near the bed, pressing my back against it, positioning myself so I could see both the door and the ceiling corner at the same time. The attic access was in the hallway, but the ceiling boards above my room connected directly to it. If someone moved wrong up there, I would hear it. And I did. A faint creak, then silence again, then another creak farther away, like someone testing the structure of the house without committing to a full step. It wasn't chaotic. That was the part that made it worse. It was organized, almost familiar, like the person up there had spent enough time inside the framework of my home to understand exactly how much sound they could make without giving away their position. Then my phone vibrated again. I almost dropped it this time. One message. No image. Just text. You should stop listening upward. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. Because I hadn't told anyone I was looking at the ceiling. I hadn't moved. I hadn't made any noise. Which meant they weren't just observing what I did. They were inferring it. Or they were close enough to see the subtle things I didn't realize I was doing. My eyes stayed locked on the ceiling for a few seconds longer before I forced myself to look away. That was when I noticed something I had missed earlier. The air in the room felt different. Not colder exactly, but stiller, like ventilation had stopped working. I realized I hadn't heard the attic insulation shifting with temperature changes either. No normal house sounds at all. Just the occasional structural complaint when someone moved above me. Another thump. This one closer. Directly above the hallway. Not random anymore. They were moving toward the attic hatch. Toward the center point of the house. I pressed my palm against my mouth without thinking. The idea formed slowly, and once it did, it refused to leave. If they were in the attic and could move freely, they could probably see down into parts of the house through gaps, vents, maybe even through the light fixtures. Old houses like this one weren't sealed as tightly as newer ones. I had never inspected the attic space. I didn't even know how much of it was actually finished. A faint scraping sound came again, but this time it wasn't above me. It was slightly to the side. Like something had shifted closer to the edge of the structure. I froze harder than I thought possible. Because now the sound wasn't just overhead. It was descending. Slowly. Not through stairs. Through structure. Through spaces between beams. Moving closer to the attic access point in the hallway. I suddenly understood something that made my chest tighten even more. They didn't need to break in. They already had access to every part of the house that mattered. The attic wasn't just above the home. It connected it. Every room. Every ceiling. Every sound I had ever ignored. Another vibration hit my phone. This time I didn't look at it immediately. I waited. The attic went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then I heard it. A soft shift. Right above the hallway hatch. Followed by something metallic brushing against wood. Not loud. Just precise enough to tell me one thing. Something had just touched the access panel from the inside. And as I sat there staring at the darkness above me, I realized the next step wouldn't be sound anymore. It would be movement. Downward. The moment the metal inside the attic shifted against the hatch, something in me stopped thinking in sentences. It became pure reaction. Sound, pressure, movement, exit. That was it. No plan beyond those 3 things. The attic access panel in the hallway creaked again, not from weight, but from controlled pressure, like someone was testing how much force it would take to push it down fully. I stayed frozen for maybe 2 seconds, maybe 10. I've never been able to reconstruct that part correctly. Time doesn't behave normally when you realize a space above your head is occupied by something that has been learning you. Then I moved. Not toward the door. Away from it. My bedroom had a small window facing the side yard. It wasn't big enough to climb out easily, but it was possible. I had checked it months ago when I first moved in, thinking about fire safety and nothing more. Now that memory became the only usable path my brain could offer. Another sound came from the hallway. This time the attic hatch didn't just shift. It dropped slightly. A soft wooden slap echoed through the corridor. That was the moment I ran. I didn't open the bedroom door. I went straight to the window, pulling the blinds so hard they snapped sideways. The latch was colder than I expected, like it hadn't been touched in a long time. My fingers slipped once before I forced it open. Behind me I heard a sound I will never forget. Not footsteps. Not running. Pause. Like the person upstairs had stopped moving the instant they heard me choose direction. That silence lasted long enough for me to realize something worse. They were listening to me leave. I pushed the window open and climbed halfway out, scraping my shoulder against the frame. The night air outside felt too wide, too open compared to the compressed space inside the house. I dropped into the grass hard enough that pain shot through my leg, but I kept moving anyway. No lights came on inside the house. No sudden chase. Just stillness. That should have comforted me. It didn't. Because silence inside a house where someone should be reacting is not peace. It's observation. I ran toward the road barefoot, not stopping to look back until I reached the edge of the driveway. Only then did I turn. The house looked normal. That's what made it worse. Windows dark. No movement. No shadow. Just a building that looked completely unoccupied. Except for one thing. The attic hatch window above the hallway had a faint glow behind it. Not bright. Not visible unless you knew where to look. A small, steady light. Inside. I called 911 immediately after that. I remember my voice breaking halfway through the sentence. I couldn't explain it properly. I kept repeating the same words. Someone is inside, someone has been inside, they're still there. The dispatcher told me to stay outside and keep distance. I already was. But I couldn't stop looking at the house. 10 minutes later, headlights appeared at the end of the road. Then another car. Then another. The quiet rural road suddenly felt full of mechanical noise and movement. When the officers entered the house, I stayed outside with one of them near the patrol car. He asked me basic questions, but I wasn't fully there. My attention kept drifting back to the attic window. Then I saw something change. A flashlight beam inside the house moved upward. Toward the ceiling. Toward the attic. The officer inside radioed something I couldn't hear clearly from outside. The second officer beside me stiffened slightly, adjusting his grip on his weapon without fully raising it. Minutes passed. Longer than before. Then I saw it. The attic hatch in the hallway finally opened fully from the inside. Light poured downward. And for the first time, I saw what had been living above me. Not a monster. Not anything impossible. A man. Thin. Unshaven. Clothes layered like he hadn't been outside in a long time. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He just stood at the top of the attic opening, looking down at the officers like he had been expecting them for hours. They brought him out slowly. No struggle. No sudden violence. Just compliance that felt worse than resistance. Later I was told what they found inside the attic. A small, makeshift space carved between insulation and beams. Blankets. Food containers. chargers connected to a line tapped from the house wiring, and something that made the officer stop talking for a moment. A notebook filled with dates, entries, observations, about me, about my schedule, about when I slept, when I left, when I came back, how long I stayed in certain rooms. One page had a simple line written over and over again. He adjusts to me now. I don't live in that house anymore. I don't think I could if I tried. But sometimes when I'm in a quiet room alone at night, I still catch myself listening upward without realizing it. And for a split second before logic catches up, I still expect to hear movement above me. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you like this story.